if you are a person who likes a lot of action, big stunts, lots of kills, like this movie is going to deliver that.
I think this was the coolest opening out of all 4 movies.
How much can you keep every kill fresh when you've got 300 and then probably another at least 100 to 150 in the 4th one? People keep asking if I'm back. I'm thinking I'm back.
Yeah.
I'm gonna need a microphone.
Yeah. And welcome to Backseat Directing.
Today we are going to do an episode covering John Wick Chapter 4, but also we're going to discuss the John Wick franchise as a whole. It's going to be a lot of fun. Before we start the episode, just quick, shameless self-promotion right into the microphone. I want to thank everyone who's watching this episode with us, but also to remind you guys that we post new episodes every Monday and Thursday. We post daily content on all of our social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We're on all the podcast platforms. We're on TikTok. Follow us on all those. Click the notification bell on TikTok to stay up to date and make sure you don't miss any of our content.
Boom. We just got back from the theater from watching John Wick Chapter 4, and literally 20 minutes later, here we are recording an episode. I watched the first 3 John Wicks in the last week. So I've had a lot of John Wick in my life over the last week and a half or so. And you watched
2 and 3.
2 and 3,
because I've seen 1 a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of the first John Wick.
Yeah.
But up until this last week, I hadn't seen 2 or 3.
Yeah. I saw the first one as well beforehand, but I wanted to rewatch it because might as well. I wanted to make sure it was fresh in my mind so I could really compare it against the other ones.
I feel like it might have kind of hurt us watching the other ones so recently, because 3 movies of John Wick, like you said, is a lot. And then to come back to it, there is definitely a lot of repetition in the John Wick franchise of the whole. I've seen a lot of just parodies of the movie where it's him
just
holding the jacket up, shooting, holding the jacket up and shooting, and then he tumbles to the ground, falls down some stairs. There's a lot of
some stairs.
Okay,
Bro.
This movie is all the stairs.
I don't know. In the second one, they fell down a lot of stairs as well.
Him and Common went down so many stairs.
Yes.
But I just think that watching the first 3 in the last week definitely set us up for
a little bit of John Wick fatigue, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I think even with that, it's still really cool.
They work really hard, and I feel like it's a huge insult to say it's repetitive, because they work really hard to be creative. Like bringing the dogs in for the 3rd movie, they have all kinds of new camera tricks that, starting with the 2nd movie, they really start to incorporate mirrors and glass and really difficult set pieces. And then they're using horses and dogs and different animals in 3 and 4. So I think that they work incredibly hard to try and make it fresh, but there's still that core element that makes it John Wick, which is the tumbling, the close quarters fighting, the knife fighting, the grappling, and then the suit. He's always using the suit as armor. So It's when he's killing 100 people per movie. I saw some stat that said in the first 3 movies he killed 299 people. I mean, how much can you keep every kill fresh when you've got 300 and then probably another at least 100 to 150 in the 4th one?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a lot of fun though.
Yeah.
And the action is really cool, and there's not a lot of franchises out there where you can watch all 3 or 4 movies back to back to back and not have that fatigue. Pretty much all of them are going to be after that 3rd one in a week, you're going to be a little tired of that franchise, you know?
There's not a lot of franchises that have the longevity to survive to the 4th movie either.
Yeah. I think off the top of my head, a franchise that pops out to where it's I could watch the first 3 movies like that and not be tired of them. Jason Bourne.
I thought obviously of the Dark Knight trilogy.
Yes, that one's good too. those are top tier.
Yeah, you can feel the slowness at some points in those movies because they are long, but that's just my segue into talking about the fact that John Wick 4 is 2 hours and 44 minutes long, I want to say.
Yeah, bro. 44? It's 49. Bro, we were in there for 2 hours and 49 minutes. And don't forget that cutscene at the end.
Yeah, if you go to see John Wick,
it's very vital to like the future of John Wick too. So like make sure you don't miss it.
Stick around. Post credits. It's a lot of credits. It's not a mid-credit scene. It's a post-credit scene.
Yeah, exactly.
But definitely be aware that there's that post-credit scene if you want to get wring every last drop out of the movie.
Okay, so movie summary. I'm gonna have you like kind of tag team with me here because how do you summarize the plot other than saying the plot of the fourth one is the plot of the third one? Just it's a different head leader that is chasing him down because he killed someone he wasn't supposed to kill.
New different people. So
yeah.
Halle Berry's gone. She's been replaced with Mr. Nobody. Zero is gone. He's been replaced with Kane. And then the same plot almost ensues for about 90% of the movie.
Yes. And that pretty much wraps up the movie summary, right? Like, I don't think we missed anything. I mean, those are the like key parts of the story throughout.
Because we're just going to mostly talk about the franchise from here on, I will kind of try to surmise the plot as best as I can, and you correct me on what I miss. So John Wick is being John Wick, doing his thing, killing everybody, and still the high table's coming after him for having...
Well, what if we start back at the first one? And like kind of summarize the whole franchise. I feel like it's not that hard, right?
Okay, we'll tag team it, go back and forth. So John Wick is a retired assassin. He quit because of love for his wife, but when she passes away, she leaves him behind a beautiful little puppy. And the puppy is in a car. And the puppy is his last remaining connection to his wife. It's something that he can take along in this grieving process to kind of help him, remind him of her. And then these 2-bit kind of young gangsters break into his house, beat him down, get him with a surprise attack, which is more and more so unbelievable as you go on in the movies. And then
he was retired at that point, though. He wasn't back.
He turned his skills off.
That's right.
He put him on sleep mode.
Exactly.
But so they kill his dog and
steal his car,
which at the time when you're watching that movie, it's absolutely devastating.
Yep.
And John Wick goes on an absolute rampage. He becomes Baba Yaga again, which is this nightmarish name they have for him, translates to the boogeyman. The underworld of criminal activity and the underworld of hitman assassins know his name. It's like whispered through the streets. He is like the highest pinnacle of, they call him the emissary of death in the second movie.
Yeah.
So he is a force.
And the kids that stole his car, their father is someone John Wick used to work with really closely. And the father is like, you stole whose car? John Wick's car?
He stole John Wick's car, sir.
Yeah.
So their names are Vigo and Yosef. Yosef is the son, and Vigo's the father. The father's played by Michael Nyqvist, and Yosef is played by Alfie Allen.
Okay, so he ends up killing the kid. He ends up killing the dad. Again, someone he used to work for. And then he gets his car back, or he doesn't get his car back yet. And that's where we pick up for John Wick Chapter 2, is him going to get his car. Who is it from? It's from the brother of Vigo, I believe. Right, because his nephew's the one who stole the car. So he's coming up. I think this was the coolest opening out of all 4 movies. I don't know. You said it was a little cheesy, but I thought it was pretty cool because I was riding high off of the first one.
Do you count the knife fight in the beginning of the third one as part of the opening?
The knife fight. Remind me of the knife.
Where they're throwing all the knives and they're in that like...
Oh, yeah. No, I like the second one better.
You like that better than the knife fight in the third one?
Yeah, just the way that they made him seem so scary. You know how he's like taking out these bad guys and you don't get to see him right away. And there's the voiceover of the brother talking of like, you don't mess with this guy. Like, we're basically dead.
I just felt like it came off as cheesy, where he's like, the stories about this guy, if anything, have been watered down.
I don't know. I thought it was cool, man.
The second one is, I did not really enjoy the opening of the second movie. I think the first one's really strong.
Like,
they start with the storytelling.
The car, like, jumping out and sliding off the road. Like, I don't know. It was just, the action was really cool. I really dug it.
The first one just starts off more somber, and you're asking questions. Who died? What happened? What's the story here? So I think the first one really drew me in more. They decided to start with a plot and give me a reason to care about this guy and his revenge and his story, and then give me a reason to care about the journey he's going on. The second one, they kind of expected me to just have that carried over from the first one.
Yeah, I was saying that the second one, maybe I didn't say it well, but the second one had the coolest opening. But I like the opening of the first one better. It definitely sets up the story better.
I think that the coolest opening to me has to have like the weight behind it. Like I think really to feel that cool factor, it has to come from somewhere.
Right.
I mean, to feel it more impactful way. That's just me personally. I mean, not that somebody running around with guns and hitting people with a car and stuff isn't still cool.
I don't know. I was watching the second one, and I don't know why I liked it so much, but I was like, that's so cool, man. Maybe it's because the Mustange's my favorite car. I mean, we got basically the same model right behind you on the shelf here. So I don't know. It's just really cool.
After he gets his car back,
which the car is totaled.
Yeah.
He used that thing to kill so many people.
Aurelio, played by John Leguizamo, is like, this is going to take a while.
I'm going to fix this in 25 years, man.
But so he gets his car back, but at that point in time, and somewhere along the lines in here, he gets a new dog too, a pit bull.
Yes.
Then an old acquaintance comes by. It's actually Santino Di Martino, who is, I believe, Italian, and he's closely related to the High Table. He's in this world of assassins. He has a marker for John Wick, which means that John made a deal with him. The deal was
blood promise.
John promised Martino a favor in exchange for his out of this world, so he could go live his life with his wife. And Santino feels he's able to call in this favor now because of the fact that John Wick is back, quote unquote, because he's back. And he calls him that favor. Santino wants Wick to kill his sister so that Santino can take her spot at the High Table, because he wants the power, he wants the control. And John Wick is initially reluctant, but after Santino blows his house up and burns it to the ground, John Wick undertakes it, goes and...
Gas leak? Yeah.
You working again, John? And so he kills the sister, putting Santino into that position of power at the High Table. Santino tries to turn on him. He sicks Ruby Rose on him. This movie brings me back to when Ruby Rose was popular for like a span of a couple of years. She was really blown up, and I don't know whatever happened with that. But so everyone's now going after John Wick. Santino puts a big hit on his head at this point, right? I think that's where the first contract comes out on John Wick.
Yep.
And then it gets really out of hand at the end of this movie when Wick finally catches up to Santino, puts a bullet in his head, and now he's excommunicated
because he did so within the
grounds of the Continental,
right? Which you cannot conduct any kind of business in terms of fighting.
Which, how cool was this mysterious world when we first entered into it in the first John Wick? Where
it was really cool.
Like I said,
it's like this is like like a safe base, like, where there's just these arbitrary rules of like you can't kill here. Like,
I love the scene.
What a video game!
I love the moment in the third movie when Zero has the upper hand on John Wick, and he just turns and puts his hand on the stair of the Continental, just a fingertip on the Continental.
Even though he's excommunicado, he's still protected on the grounds.
Well, they had to argue that because Lance Reddick's character, which rest in peace, Lance Reddick, it's an unfortunate loss, but his character Arron was standing outside when that happened, and Zero made the argument he's not safe here, he's excommunicated, and Zero said, or Karen said, you basically don't have the right to decide that. Like, you're like, as long as he's here, he's safe for right now, even if excommunicated. The thing about the rules of this universe is, especially as the movies go on, they continue to bend them more and more and break them, which kind of, I feel like, desaturates and waters down the first John Wick movies, the value of these rules, because people in the world tend to just break them because of the fact that they seem to have really long-standing relationships where they respect John Wick a lot. And I think that's kind of a theme in this world that I can kind of accept, which is, you know, the values of like professionalism or responsibility, or the importance of like what I think it's important. I'm trying to phrase it in the best way, but respect for the rules versus your loyalties to, you know, the people you care about. And that's kind of where a lot of people like Winston, who gives John Wick a head start at the end of the second movie. And then obviously Karen has a lot of respect for John Wick. And then going into the fourth movie, the opening, Jigo, was that his name? Goji.
You're the name guy.
Goji is the name. I'll bet money on that. Goji is the manager of the Japanese Continental, and he obviously is willing to break the rules for John Wick too. So John Wick's ties with some of these people just kind of run deeper than their value.
The rules. Yeah. Which they must have gone through a lot.
I mean, it holds a lot of weight because breaking these rules just flat out means death to a lot of people.
Right.
But it starts to get murky to me in between 2 and 3, where people are like sticking their neck out for him, but then when the high table comes around, they go, oh no, I don't want to die, or I don't want to lose my position. Like Winston, it's okay, you didn't know this was going to happen. You seem very knowledgeable of the rules of the society, and you made that decision to give John Wick a head start knowing this.
Yeah, so basically John Wick Chapter 3 is everyone chasing him down because there's this bounty on him now for shooting the guy on Continental grounds.
I think starts at $14 million, and then by the end of John Wick 4, I think it's at $40 million. Yeah.
So basically that story kind of continues all through the third and then into the fourth, just with different people.
Moving forward from here, this is where I want to put the spoiler warning. I didn't want to put it right in at the beginning, but we are going to spoil John Wick 4. I don't think we've done a good job kind of avoiding it until now. I want to hit the big spoiler right now, so definitely pause the episode if you are going to watch John Wick 4. That was your lead up time. John Wick dies at the end of this movie. I just wanted to say that one.
What the heck, man?
I just wanted to get it out of the way.
Is he actually dead?
Now
or did they make the tomb as like a statement of retirement?
I think that potentially,
because I mean, we know that there's another there's spin-offs and stuff in development, and he's supposed to make cameos in those. So do those take place just before this time?
I think it would kind of be, if he's alive, which I kind of maintain that I think he is alive. I do think it's weird the way they filmed that scene, because they were standing over it like I never thought I'd see the day from The King, played by Lawrence Fishburne. What do you mean you never thought you'd see the day? If they're kind of subtextually saying that he's retired, you knew he wanted to be retired the whole time. So that seems like a weird thing to say. It seems like he's definitely, they're acting as though he's dead, but it could just be a mislead for us as the
Winston
audience.
also said son at the end. Do you take that as in like they're together, related, or that he was just like, hey brother, you know, like,
I think
you're like a son to me?
He said my son too, which is even more particular, I think, than just calling him, hey there, sonny boy.
When I first heard it, I thought like, did he mean like actual? No, he didn't. And then I just kind of moved on. But I feel like the way that they set it up, it's a understandable question, right? Like
I think that he's saying that he's his son. I mean, if you look at them, they have a somewhat similar appearance. They both have the dark hair and certain features.
It kind of explains why
he'd be so willing to go out on a limb for him.
Right.
He purposely...
Why he gave him the hour head start at the end of John Wick 2.
Movie, at the end of Parabellum, he shoots him off the roof, but obviously very purposefully. Seems like he tried to give him a chance to escape.
That John Wick can survive a 10-story fall, but like if they were like on the building behind them, like he knew he couldn't shoot him off the building because that's his limit.
That's an 11-story fall.
Yeah, exactly. So
he mapped out the fact that his body was going to aggressively bash off of a pole.
That just slows him down, so by the time he gets to the floor, the force isn't as hard.
It's like gentle, basically like landing on a bed of roses.
Yeah, it's just science. You know, like
his head banged off of that thing so hard.
No, but That's like this is your strongest part in your body, Andrew.
They do say to lead with your head if you're falling down.
Yeah.
You don't want to like break your hands or anything.
No.
So you kind of just go head forward.
Look how fragile and small this looks compared to
Compared to this rock hard skull.
You know, like feel that like different. It's different, man. Like, yeah.
They could literally hit a home run using John Wick's head as a bat. It's so strong.
Any part of him, honestly.
Yeah.
He can just hit it with his hand.
All of his bones are pure titanium.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to talk a lot about the movies.
Well, before we move on, we were still talking about Winston being his dad.
Yes.
I do want to say that I do think he's his dad because of the choice of the words for my son and for the choice of him saying it in Russian. Because John Wick we learn through the John Wick mythos that he's from Belarus. And I think that like the root language and everything, John Wick tends to I think John Wick's origins are like Russian, Eastern European. So I think the choice of saying it in another language, saying my son, some of the physical appearances, plus like you said, explaining away the fact that he's kind of given him this preferential treatment outside the rules. I think he would be his dad, but it's also a weird connection too, this unspoken connection between them, because the movie also tells us John Wick was an orphan on the street, taken in by the Ruska Roma and raised as an assassin. So
maybe we're just overthinking this, and it's like they just had that type of relationship. But I don't know. It still feels like it could go either way, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I'm leaning towards him being his dad.
I feel like that makes more sense in this world that doesn't make sense.
It's weird that they included it if it's not true.
Right.
If it's weird they did it the way they did.
Yeah. They could have used any other word there, you know? And they don't have a lot of words in these movies, so their words are intentional.
Oh, yeah. I mean, John Wick does not have a lot of words, but the movie.
I wish we had like a word count, you know, and see how it compares to his death count.
Less words than kills in the whole movie. For every 50 guys he kills, you get a yeah.
I'm going to need another gun. All right, so let's move on to our ratings, earnings, and creators behind the movies. This John Wick 4 obviously came out this past weekend. It's rated R. We said it's 2 hours and 49 minutes long. You kind of felt the length a little bit on that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was a while. I wouldn't say it was a slow movie, though, but it's a lot of similar things, you know?
Yeah,
I mean it's a lot of fighting without complete intention behind it, you know. Like, I think the problem for me with the fighting a little bit, and maybe this is kind of foreshadowing our backseat directing, is everyone he's fighting, like, you don't know. You have no relationship, so you don't like understand the weight of the fight maybe as like you did maybe in the first one.
Yeah, I think that take my review with a grain of salt. I mean, I'll always tell anybody any day of the week that ratings are super, super subjective, and just know that like what you like. If you are a person who likes a lot of action, big stunts, lots of kills, like this movie is going to deliver that. And just because I felt like it was long doesn't mean it didn't have that. I mean, I'd say 2 hours at least of the 2 hours and 49 minutes are pure high speed, high octane action.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's a crazy high percentage for any action movie in history. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So just because it felt long doesn't mean it was slow. It just was a long movie.
Yes.
And some of the story elements don't always keep my head in it.
IMDb has it at an 8.4 out of 10. Rotten Tomato critics have it at a 94%, which is equaled to the audience score of also 94%. That's like crazy high to me.
I think this movie is wildly getting overrated right now.
Dude, it's getting hype.
Give it some time. Just give it like a couple weeks and we'll see.
I mean, it has a decent amount of views or reviews though on Rotten Tomatoes.
As of
for
today,
the critics, it has 287. For the audience score, has 2,500 plus reviews. So like that's a decent amount, you know.
It's a decent amount of reviews, but it still needs to stand more of a test of time.
Oh, for sure.
Rating, for sure. I think just to be clear, as of right now, we're filming this episode almost a full week from the release of the movie, considering it came out Thursday night. So this is the following Wednesday.
Yes. Let's go into our ratings. Story. We have out of 10. I give it a 5. What did you give it?
Give it a 4.
A 4? Okay.
I think
close
that's
together.
Very valid. I'm glad we're close because I originally wrote down Like I was thinking like a 2 or a 3, and then I was like, that's too aggressive. I mean, you have to think of the movies that can fit beneath it, like a Sharknado and things like that.
Right. Yeah. Like kind of like you say all the time, like when we rate something a 10 out of 10, like that's the mark, like, is this the mark for a 2? Like, I don't know, but it's definitely not the strength of the movie,
It's below average.
Yeah. Acting, I gave it a 7 out of 10. What'd you give it?
I gave it a 6.
So
we're really close.
I said a 7
at all.
I feel like for pure acting and like delivery of lines and like maybe the writing of the lines and stuff, maybe a little bit lower, but I gave it such a high score because of how much of their stunts the actors are actually doing, especially Keanu.
Yeah.
Like that's acting too. Like he's acting like this crazy assassin and he's pulling it off.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy what he's doing. How old is he?
He's 50 something.
Yeah, he's not young. Like whenever someone's like 50, 60 something, I try to think of like my dad doing this stuff, or like, and my dad could not do what John Wick was doing,
I honestly feel like I should knock them. Like, I won't change my score right now, but I feel like I deserve to be knocked up a point based on what you're saying. If in the acting, I mean, you got to think about physical acting,
it's
right?
his whole performance.
So the way that he reloads a gun earns this movie an extra point. It's so he's
that
so
right
in
there
it.
is the 7.
Yeah, doing the actual stunts, all like everything like that. I mean, I'm not that impressed by performances coming from like Ian McShane or Lawrence Fishburne, even though they are good actors. Keanu, decent actor. I'm not that impressed by the performance overall, but like the physical performance, like selling, the doing his stunts, the fighting, the reloading. I'm like, man, Keanu, I would not want Keanu Reeves hunting me right now.
For sure. Cinematography, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. It looks phenomenal. I love how they play with lights. I think maybe it's a lot. It's aggressive.
Yeah.
And I like it when movies kind of like take that step and really dive into their style. But again, 7 out of 5. I think that's a good score. What did you give it?
So I gave it an 8 out of 10, which is kind of where I counted in. This is kind of my area where I counted in the action and the physical fighting and all of that, like the blocking of the scenes and the camera techniques they use, the long takes for the fighting to really keep you in the fight, those overarching shots, especially where they go over the top of the set that they made to show the fight from a top-down view. I'm a sucker for top-down view shots. I think that some of the creative filming and the shot styles, and then like you said too, like just their use of colors. I mean, you can cut across. I could probably, what I think is a really identifiable marker for good cinematography is if you can scroll across that little bottom marker where you get the little image of the screen and you can pick out different points in the movie from the color composition. Like if I'm in the beginning, I can see those pinks and purples in Japan that are being used, like the flowers and the lighting. And then I can see later in the movie, I can just picture it in my head, like some of the blues and the reds as you go further, and then down to the like orange and yellows of the sunrise at the very end of the movie. I think that the colors are very prominently featured and the lighting is really cool. The shots are really creative, and like I said, main thing is the long takes, keeping you in the action, keeping the actor's face in camera.
They really don't cut that much during a fight,
which is uncharacteristic of action movies. I mean, you think about like Jason Bourne, they're like trying to hide everything. This movie's trying to show you as much as they can.
Yeah. And I would say probably 95% of the hits actually look like they're landing too.
Yeah.
Like
you catch.
I would have to rewatch it to really think of an actual like instant or two where it's like, oh, like that didn't look like it connected.
And stuff will be really incredibly quick as well. For example, the blade that goes through John Wick's hand when Kane stabs him in the hand really quick. It looked very realistic really cool. And very quick.
Yeah.
Like they snap it really quick and it just looks very, very believable. It's hard to think how the actors were so precise in nailing that placement and everything for however they got the shot.
All right, our next category is sound design. So this is like the sounds of all the guns, the music that you hear in the background, the soundtrack that you hear. I gave it a 7 out of 10.
It's also counting the score as well.
Yeah,
I gave it a 7 also.
Okay.
I think this had some of the strongest sound design of the franchise, some of the best music I think the music added to the moments really well. The radio station where they were playing kind of those that one French remix of the song was really good. But the radio station playing the songs during the long fight sequence out on the streets, and then the techno music that's integral to the John Wick franchise, and the club, and that street fight scene again, plus like the gunshots
I was
are really
my
good.
head throughout
we were
the whole
moving.
movie. Yeah,
The
was
gunshots
good.
are really, really good as well.
Yeah, I think
Loads, all of it.
I think that aspect of it, I think the first movie sticks out to me more, of like the gun reloads and the sound of like the action. I think that stands out to me more. The sound of the Mustang, like that stuff was cool.
I think in the first movie, it just hit so much harder. I mean, even there's still visceral scenes in this movie where like the big Spanish guy throws him into the telephone pole and he bashes off it, and you have that loud thud. I mean, there's so much more of it now. I think that, like we talked about before, it might dilute it a little bit because your brain gets used to it and expects it. In the first movie, it was kind of tempered a little better, where you really felt when he cracked somebody's neck, you kind of like really jumped at it.
Yeah. All right. Our next category is set and character design. I gave it a 3 out of 5.
Also gave it exactly a 3 out of 5.
All right,
We're
cool.
very, very on par with this rating.
Yes. And then rewatchability. This is a big one for me. Out of 5 times, Andrew, how many times would you rewatch this movie if someone asked you?
Say it on 3. 1, 2, 3, 2.
Let's go. So we're pretty darn close. So this gave me a score of a 6.3 out of 10. What did you get?
I had a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. Yeah.
I rated the first 2 just a little bit lower than you, and that's where our difference comes in.
Yeah.
But
and only by a point too. Yeah. We were really close on this.
I think that ranks fairly valid, right? To where I picture this movie being rated in my mind. What about you?
Yes, I was kind of worried. You know how like when we're filling out these, we're like, oh, like this movie's probably like an 8.5, and then we fill out our categories and it's like a 7.6. And it's like a full point lower than you thought it was going to be. I was worried that this was going to be too high.
Yeah,
I was like, I don't want this movie to be in the 7s. Like I don't want it to be in the 7s. Like it needs to represent where I think it actually stands, and I think it came out relatively close. I mean, IMDb has it an 8.4 out of 10,
which seems to me aggressively high. I mean,
yes.
If you're rating the movie solely based on stunts and action, 8.4 all day.
Amazing.
I mean, 9 or so if you're rating it on just that. This is like the 9 to 10 range for stunts and action, but if you're rating it as a movie as a whole, it's gotta be some notches below that.
And that's why we picked these categories, because these like little subcategories can kind of fit within the categories that we have, like the action, like stunts. We don't have a category for stunts. Not every movie has like crazy stunts, like it kind of all goes into like acting and how they performed that. And then
we talked about that when we made our rating system, but it'd just be kind of unfair to Gone with the Wind to judge it based on its,
or like VFX shots. Like some movies don't have a lot of VFX shots.
Don't have them at all.
Yeah, and what are we gonna do? Give it a 0? That's not fair. So that falls under like cinematography and how they like set up the actual shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a 6.3 and a 6 out of 10 comparable to where we thought the movie. Yeah, exactly.
I had imagined it as a 6.5, so pretty darn close.
Yeah.
Ready for my segment?
Yeah. Oh, here, let me go into the budget first real quick. So for this movie, it was a $90 million budget. And so far, as of Wednesday, the week after it came out, they're at $152.7 million.
I mean, that's
a lot.
It's a successful movie, I think.
I saw somewhere that this is every John Wick movie's had a larger opening weekend than the previous movie, and that's really hard to do with a franchise, especially with a franchise that started with a really low budget. So John Wick, the first one that came out in 2014, had a budget of
my guess was 20. No, my guess was 30 million.
30 million. Close. You're at 20 million.
Okay.
And then how much do you think they brought in?
My guess was 250 million.
86 million.
Oh, really?
86 million for the first movie.
That's what's considered a success on these low budget action movies, because that's...
it 4 times its budget.
Yeah, but when you account for the fact that that's the worldwide gross, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to account for the fact that they also had to market the movie, which being a $20 million movie, they probably didn't market it too much. So you can say that's just like 5 million, 10 million. It's not too much, but you got to account for the fact that revenue in theaters, each additional week that it's in theaters, the split continues to be cut in half, where originally the opening weekend, there's like something like 70-80% of the profits are going to the production company, and then it gets slowly cut each week going out. So movies don't tend to make as much money as they appear when you look at the budget and revenue.
Right. But I think overall, for $20 million, 86 isn't bad, but it is a lot lower than I was expecting it to be now that they have 4.
Yes, that's what shocks me, is that it spawned a 4-movie franchise.
All right, let's go to the second one. Had a budget of?
Well, I'm going to guess it raised, so I'm going to say 35 million.
Pretty darn close, 40 million.
Okay.
And then how much do you think this movie brought in? The second John Wick?
150 million.
That's pretty close, 174.3. So definitely a pretty big climb there, right?
Yeah. I mean, they more than doubled their earnings, didn't they?
Yeah. 80 to 170. Yep. And then the third one,
they're building on their success.
What do you think we had here for the budget?
Okay, the third one. So if they just had 40. I'm going to say 55.
75. Pretty big jump.
That's
right?
A big jump.
Almost double the budget. And then they brought in
they brought in last one was 175. I'm going to say 210.
$328.4 million.
To think that's closer to where I thought the first movie started than where it actually did.
Yeah.
I think that is really crazy to me, hearing some of those numbers, because when you look at 2 and 3, does it feel like the budget between 2 and 3 is a difference of that much?
That's a good question. I think it kind of does in terms of scale and how many different locations they had.
They went international in the second one too. They went to Europe.
Yeah. But I feel like the amount of like separate locations that they had and stuff, like they had more actors, like it wasn't just him fighting, like Halle Berry was in there, throwing it down and stuff. Like it definitely feels a little bit bigger, but I think the first one felt really good for what they had, like top tier for $20 million, like
the first one just plain feels good.
Yeah. I feel like $20 million feels really low for their budget for the first one. Yeah. Like I would have guessed higher.
I only guessed 30. I guess I only guessed 30 because of the fact that I knew it was low beforehand.
Right. And then again, to kind of contrast, the fourth movie, $90 million budget, and so far has brought in $152 million. So
just starting out.
It's only been a week, so it's on pace to make more than John Wick 3. And everyone on social media that I've typically watched for reviewing movies and shows, like they're all giving high praise to this movie. And yeah, I think it's a good movie. It's fun, it's entertaining, but they're throwing like everything at this movie,
We're the naysayers.
Yeah, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And I don't like to always be negative, but like I also want to say how we feel, and be realistic with our reviews of movies. What is the order from best to worst John Wick?
I already know this. The best John Wick, easily the first one, and then the second one. And then I'd say this new movie, John Wick 4, climbs up to the number 3 spot, and then in last place, Parabellum has to sit at the bottom for me. How about you?
I would totally agree with you. I really liked it, the first 2 movies. And I feel like I told you this at the end of this movie when we were still at the theater. I was like, the more they like developed the world and did more world building throughout each chapter, the less I kind of liked it. Is that fair? Do you kind of feel the same
I
way?
agree, but I just wish that the truth was the opposite.
Yeah.
Because it seems like the more they develop the world, the more you should like it. But they just kind of...
In the first 2, it was like... there's still a lot of questions, and like we had that token thing promise thing. What do they call it?
Oh, the mark.
Yeah, like
the marker.
That was a cool concept. Like, and then they kind of lost me in the third and fourth one. A little bit of developing those ideas that they were leading towards.
And they just seem to kind of bend the rules in a way that devalues the marker, devalues everything in the world as they kind of build it and kind of over-explain things in some ways. I think like John Wick's backstory, it was cooler when he just kind of had these tattoos that gave us a little bit of clue. John Wick has a tattoo on his back. It says like Fortune, Fortuna, Adiviat or something. I don't speak Latin, but it's
you have to step it up. Okay.
It's a little bit, so there's a military saying that has a slightly different phrase. And so this kind of had a lot of people thinking that there's a military phrase that is very similar, and that phrase means fortune favors the bold. But the John Wick one actually means something slightly different. So it comes from the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, Fortis Fortuna Juvat. That is the one that means fortune favors the bold. And that, I think this kind of connection between the tattoo being similar with that phrase had people theorizing that John Wick had a military past. You know, it seems close enough. With all his skills and training, it seems like, where did he get all this from? But it was still a mystery. As we unfold more in the movies, the lore kind of unveils to us that John Wick was born in Belarus. He was born, Jardani Javonovich, and then took on the name John Wick much later. And I don't know, I just liked him better as a mystery. They tell us that he was taken in by this group, the Ruska Roma, and he was grown and trained to be an assassin. In the 3rd movie, we see him walking through this house where they're all clearly training different forms. They're training with guns. They're training all these takedowns and jujitsu and different things that John Wick is very skilled in. We see where all that came from. But, I mean, he's the boogeyman. He's a myth. Like, he should be the stuff of legend. I don't want to see the inner workings. It's kind of like when Star Wars brought in midichlorians. It's like, we don't need to see behind the curtain to some things.
Right. Yeah, the mystery of the first one and even kind of going into the second one was what was like really fascinating. Yeah, you know, and like I definitely want answers, but maybe not to everything, and these weren't the answers that I was hoping for, I guess.
Yeah, right. It must not be because the way we feel, but and then even like the long-standing relationships between like him and Winston and the concierge and Santino and all these people, there always seemed to be like this deep-seated respect between all the members of this community where they didn't necessarily want to kill each other but felt they had to. Circumstances pitted them against each other, but they respected each other's talent and skills and they had a history together. And then just as the world goes on more, it just seems like that is less and less valuable. Yeah, as they continue to do this. Yeah.
I can't hear that word any differently right now. You know,
Keanu, you beautiful bastard.
All right, I think that's a good segue. Keanu, who's behind the camera? Who's in front of the camera? Who are the creators of the John Wick franchise, but more specifically, John Wick Chapter 4?
All right, so the John Wick franchise, this can get very muddled. But the easy thing to say is that Chad Stahelski is like, he's the cohesive piece to the puzzle that brings all John Wick together along with Keanu. So Chad Stahelski is the director. The first movie he directed along with David Litch, who went uncredited in the first movie, I guess because of issues with them crediting two directors with the accreditation. I think it was with the Directors Guild of America. I didn't want them to have two directors. So that's, I think from then on, Chad Stahelski kind of became his baby. He directed the rest of the movie solo from there on out through to John Wick 4. Derek Kolstad wrote the first movie. And
that's kind of rare, right? Having the same director through
movies,
a full franchise like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having trouble in my head thinking of another franchise of 4 movies that has the same director, because I feel like usually we can think of a couple for 3 movies, but how often does it happen for 4 or more?
Yeah.
So the Derek Kolstad was the writer for the first movie, created the character of John Wick. He is credited on the other movies for creating the character, but he's no longer involved in the writing. The other movies are I believe majority of the writing is done for the next 3 movies by Shay Hatton and Chris Collins and Mark Abrams. The combination of the 3 of them write the other movies. Cinematography is by Jonathan Sella in the first movie, and then Dan Louston actually does cinematography for John Wick's 2 through 4. And then the editors I won't even get into because it seems like there's different editors for all the movies.
Who's for the fourth? Does it say that on there? Sorry, I didn't mean to ruin your role here.
Wow, you're a bad person.
Editors are people too, okay? They work really hard in these movies, speaking as an editor, okay?
So the editing in this fourth one is by Nathan Orloff.
All right, there we go. We can move on now.
All right. Now, I'll touch quickly on the cast for the movies. John Wick, obviously, is played by our man Keanu Reeves, the man, the myth, the legend. In the first movie, you've got Willem Dafoe as Marcus, John Leguizamo as Aurelio, Ian McShane in all the movies as Winston the manager, Lance Reddick in all 4 of the movies as Charon the concierge, Lawrence Fishburne starting in... I'm sorry?
R.I.P.
Oh, yeah. Lawrence Fish... I thought you said Marquis. I was like... No, Marquis is a different guy. Lawrence Fishburne as the Bowery King starting in the second movie all the way through to this one. Halle Berry as Sophia in the second movie. And then villains, we already touched on Viggo and Yosef. Ricardo Scamarcio is Santino de Antonio. Common as Cassian in the second movie. Mark Dacascos is Zero in the third movie, and Asia Kate Dillon as the Adjudicator in the third movie as well. The fourth movie, our new additions to the cast include Clancy Brown as the Harbinger. We have Bill Skarsgård as the Marquis. And then we have all our returning cast members, as well as Donnie Yen as Kane and Shamir Anderson as the Tracker, which I don't think he should be really credited on IMDb as the Tracker. He should be credited as Mr. Nobody, because that's what he goes by throughout the film, which I expected to see.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't keep that name.
To me, that's a reference actually to the Odyssey, which is a story in Greek mythology. It's an epic poem. And in that story, Odysseus, when he's going up against this Cyclops, he tricks him by saying, my name is Nobody. And then as he's escaping, he shouts something like, no, you were fooled by Odysseus, and unveils his name. And ultimately, his pride becomes his undoing by, sharing his name at the very last minute. So I thought there was going to be some kind of link there for Mr. Nobody, that his pride was going to be his downfall, but maybe that was just something completely unintentional, that a parallel that I imagined in my mind. But I really like the story of the Odyssey, and I know a lot of people do as well.
Yes. Who is the fat guy in this fourth one he was dealing the cards and stuff? What was his name?
Is it Scott Adkins?
That's who plays
Killa?
That's who plays him, yeah.
Killa is the name.
So he's a stunt actor, and in the movie, he's wearing a fat suit. And it looks pretty good, right?
It looks pretty good. I think I felt like I could tell it was a suit before I knew he looked different.
Did you? I felt like it looked pretty good.
It just looked like an odd body shape. Like it looked like a little inhuman.
Yeah, some people look a little odd, though.
Also, a big part of it, too, is the way he was moving in it. Like those roundhouse kicks.
Yeah, that's what was cool about it.
That's a little hard to believe from somebody in that.
Bro, I was already so not believing by that point that I was like, all right, that's pretty cool right there,
It is a hard movie to believe in general.
But I don't know. I think that's cool. He stands out to me because he is on Stuntman Reacts a lot for what's the channel called? They do Stuntman Reacts.
The VFX guys? Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, man. I watch them all the time. Why can't I think of their name? I'm going to think of their name. You keep talking.
Mad disrespect, Aaron. But that covers most of the cast for this universe that I wanted to go over. I don't think... Corridor actually
crew.
Does sound familiar now that you say it. They're great. They make really entertaining videos. They don't need your help.
I know. I'm just paying respect. All right.
If they want to give us a shout out back, feel free.
Yes.
Anyway, that covers the cast. Who do you like the most outside of Keanu Reeves? Because obviously he puts the whole franchise on his back. Just the way he does everything. Just every way that, besides some of the line deliveries, he is absolutely perfect.
Yes.
For this role.
Yeah.
I am not in love with some of the line deliveries, but...
Yeah, I agree. Some of them I feel like fall a little flat, and I don't know if it's just the timing or maybe even just the writing. I don't know. But yeah, you're right. Some of them don't hit the mark.
I was saying to you in the theater when he spoke one of the lines in the movie that... I think it was when he said, I'm going to
kill them all or something. Or I'm going to, yeah.
he said like, and I'm gonna kill you. Like something I was saying to you, if Liam Neeson delivered that line, I would have been on the edge of my seat. Just like Liam Neeson has, I think, the coldest line delivery in action movie history, which is that I will find you. And I will kill you. And it's so good. And it's good because of him.
Yes.
And then these lines I feel like are written well, but just not delivered to perfection by Keanu. While I love him as a human being. I love him in general. I do love him as an actor, but some of the line deliveries take me out of it a little bit. And these peak action moments that should be really good. But he is an absolute legend for doing what he does in terms of the hundreds and hundreds of hours he must have spent dealing with firearms training, and he looks like a real professional out there holding weapons, fighting. Like he looks like more of a stuntman than an actor at some points.
Right, for sure. I think I liked Donnie Yen Kane a lot.
I think he might be my new favorite character in the John Wick franchise.
Yeah, for the second, I think right below. I really liked the guy who played the tracker.
He was great. I liked him a lot.
Yeah, I felt like he was a little out of place though.
Yeah, his character in the story, not the actor in the character.
I was intrigued most by his character and was hoping that we would like get more, but he always kind of seemed to show up randomly, and then I never really knew like who he was with. Like, is he trying to save John Wick or is he trying to kill John Wick? Because he had plenty of chances to do either.
To clarify for the audience, what the movie wants us to believe is that the whole time he's saving John Wick so the bounty can get higher because he's trying to gamble for more money. And then at the very end of the movie, the only reason he doesn't finally kill John Wick is because of a storyline that I actually like, which is John has an open shot to take out Mr. Nobody, and instead he chooses to save Mr. Nobody's dog because John has a soft spot in him for dogs, which we see from the very first movie running full circle into the fourth. That's what I really liked about it. Like, to just make that decision out of nowhere would have been kind of corny, but we know that it's kind of an inherent element to John Wick's character. So to make that decision felt natural and true to his character to do that. And then he left Mr. Nobody alive, and Mr. Nobody kind of had that respect for him because he clearly has a very close relationship with his dog in the movie.
Yeah, he I don't know. It just felt a little out of place at certain points. You know,
just pop in and out. I don't know why he pulled his hand through that knife. Stuff like that doesn't make a lot of sense.
I also don't understand why he didn't get in trouble for killing the guy with the little pendant. You know, the Kane, he said, I can't shoot you, you know, but why can this other guy shoot him?
Well, because Kane was
consequences?
under threat from the Marquis that he had to be on their side in order to keep his daughter safe. They didn't really have anything on Mr. Nobody, I suppose, would be the difference. Also,
he killed like a higher up, right?
Also,
like,
who would really know that he killed him?
I guess
there was nobody around at that point.
Yeah.
So to be fair, I guess that's kind of a defense for it.
It was also really cool seeing Joe Burrow in there too.
He's talking about Bill Skarsgård. They do have a striking resemblance to one another.
Yeah. The whole time, that's the only thing I could think of when he was on the screen. I was like, man, he's got to get to football practice soon.
I don't like when people do French accents in movies. Unless they're real. I can't judge if it's good or not. Is the hard part for me. It's like I can't tell if he's doing really well or really bad.
Just feels a little maybe cheesy.
It sounded different than the girl that was doing the radio that I believe was natively French.
Yeah.
And it was like his was a lot more pronounced.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't know how to feel about it either.
I do like Bill Skarsgård. I like him in Barbarian.
All right. So what throughout this movie, Chapter 4, but then also throughout the franchise, what are some of your like favorite shots, favorite action scenes? You know, like what are some of the moments that stick out to you the most?
All right, this is a good way to bring this episode to a close on a high note, complimenting the series. I like that. Good idea. So let's both go over some of our favorite moments. Well, I'm gonna say definitely. And we're talking like everything, right? Sequences or small, like everything from a small move.
What stuck out to you the most? I have a few, but I have one that's just like one like camera shot that I was like, oh, that was kind of cool.
What is that?
So I think it's the second one. I don't know why it stuck out to me, but he is in the streets or whatever, and he's shooting the people that are coming to kill him, and one of the shots, the camera's right behind the guy that he's shooting at, and John shoots him in the head, and the blood splats onto the camera. But as soon as it splats onto the camera, it's very subtle. It's like kind of in the corner. It immediately cuts to the splat finishing, hitting the wall from behind John. So like, I don't know, it just the cut just seemed like really fluid, you know. So like the camera's here, the guy's here, gets shot, the blood goes onto the lens, but as soon as it does, it's going over here, and you still see the splatter like spreading on the wall.
Yeah, I feel like a good,
I don't know, it was really
one
really
word
cool.
compliment for the franchise is smooth. Just smooth. But I mean, as a whole scene, I would pick the assault on John Wick's house in the first movie. All the people in the gear coming in, like the wet squad coming in to take him out.
That was the first that we got to see John Wick in action, right? Like,
so I mean, it's pretty peak for that. You can't really ignore the value of the first.
Has
John
to
Wick
be
was
like
unleashed.
the best like gun sequence in the franchise, and arguably any other movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of them.
Yeah.
It's definitely in the conversation for best ever.
Yeah, like if we did a gun draft,
That would be
for
far
movie.
over.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be a first round draft pick right there.
Absolutely.
For sure.
I also really like the scene. I think it's in the second movie when he's checking to see if there's a bullet in the chamber, because John Wick has a specific type of gun that he uses that is known for jamming. So a cool behind the scenes detail is that every time he uses that gun, he checks to make sure that it's not jammed. So he checks the clip, he checks the chamber, and in that scene, he single-handedly flips his hand on top of the gun, moves the slide back, sees the bullet in the chamber, and just smoothly puts his hand back down, going back to that fluidity of motion. And the way that he reloads every time is so fluid, but that one in particular, I just was like, oh, hold on. Damn, that was cool. That kind of caught my attention. This movie, I thought it was really cool when the agent from the Marquis got shot at with an arrow, and he shot his arm up in the air and took the arrow to the arm to block his face, and then he's just so calm and accepting of the fact that he just got an arrow right through his arm. He was so speedy to react and so calm in the moment. That's what I think is really cool about John Wick and makes him the boogeyman, is John Wick's skills for assessment. That's something I almost forgot to talk about here, but I think that his assessment of situations is so top tier and next level. That's what makes him truly frightening to all these people, because he doesn't bench press the most in the room. He's not the youngest guy in the room. He's not necessarily the fastest on foot speed.
He just has titanium bones.
He does have, so other than plot armor, what he has is incredibly good decision making, because you'll see this all the time where he has somebody pinned on the ground, and instead of shooting them, he makes a million split-second decisions instead, and he shoots somebody else,
rolls over,
punches that person to keep the person he has pinned disoriented, shoots two more people, and then when he has an opening, shoots the person that he's been grappling with for the last 30 seconds. And then his order of shooting people is always in the order that they are a threat. If somebody's dazed and confused, he shoots the person that has a line of sight on him with a gun. He shoots the person with a gun before he shoots the person with a knife. It's all these like small, perfect decisions that he's making to stay alive.
Yeah.
On top of the plot
The
armor.
fights are very well calculated, even to where they're like counting how many bullets are in the clip and the chamber and stuff. You know, like I was counting certain scenes. I was like, that clip should have 16 bullets in it. Counted it at 16. It ran out. And I was like, wow, that was really cool. A lot of movies ignore that fact, and I feel like it's such a simple thing to keep up with.
There's something you'll hear stuntmen talk a lot about. I know you've heard this because you watch all these behind the scene videos, but part of their job is to make it look like the fight is realistic. And in terms of doing that, one of the biggest things they have to do is not be standing around like in The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah.
So they need to be staggered or falling or getting up slowly, or there needs to be some reason why they're not dogpiling John Wick.
Yeah.
And in this movie, you'll find these franchise, you'll find very little instances where it's not believable.
I feel like you see it the most though in this one.
Yeah.
Or at least I did.
I felt like it could kind of see, but I felt like I could see them kind of hurt though, even in instances they were selling it a little bit more than. It's still above the bar. I feel like for
John Wick was also hurt.
He wasn't though. He wasn't. He should have been. Oh my gosh, guys, He got hit by 4 cars. He got shot. He got flipped in the air. He got
thrown off 2 buildings.
He fell a total of probably 7 to 8 stories. He got shot dozens of times. I mean, Kevlar does not protect you from impact. It just protects you from the piercing.
He
bullet.
climbed up 5 sets of stairs, fighting probably 30 people, and then fell down the same stairs 30 flights. Okay, does that make sense? He went up 5, and then the same set of stairs he fell down 30,
and then he somehow climbed up it again and continued to fight.
Yes,
he went through this movie. He went through the longest without being bloodied.
Yes.
He definitely made it really far into this movie without being seriously injured, and fought the most opponents of any movie. So that's where that believability. They definitely stretch our.
But I feel like in the third one, they were like the opposite. Like, he was so injured, I was like, oh my gosh, how is he moving right now? You know, and this one, he was like not injured at all. And you're like, oh my gosh, how is he not injured right now?
The third one opens with him being stabbed.
Yeah.
That big stab wound over the shoulder.
Yeah. And he already has a gunshot wound. And he goes to that doctor or whatever.
That's where I was like at the beginning of that movie thinking, how are they going to have another hour and a half, 2 hours from here of him just fighting 100 guys? He's so wounded. And then in John Wick 4, he's just completely an impenetrable, invulnerable demon. I feel like they stretch our disbelief more every movie in new and creative ways.
For sure. And I feel like I don't have as much elastic stretch left towards the end. But again, I like these movies.
The first movie was believably unbelievable.
Yes, I would agree with that statement. That's a good way to put it. Some shots that stuck out to me, I really like Mustangs. I like old Mustangs, classic Mustangs. So even just the
car nerd.
Yeah, when he's just driving the car at the airport and he's not fighting anyone. He's just driving around. You hear the cool sound design of the car and stuff. Like, I was like, that was cool.
I like those daylight scenes in John Wick in the first act of that first movie.
Yeah.
Because there's some good like daylight shots, which is not very prominent throughout the rest of the movies. It's really dark. I
totally agree with you on the first fight in his house, you know, the gunfight.
Knife fight scene in the beginning of the third movie is really good. I like the entire fight with Keanu and Common in the second movie, but especially when they're walking through, I think it's like a train station, some kind of public transportation, and they're just casually like hiding their guns inside their coat and secretly shooting each other with the whole crowd. Oh my gosh, we're running out of time because this episode's going so long. But that was another big question I had for you is we can talk about where are the police, but I feel like an even bigger question to me is this a dream sequence? Like, because every human being on Earth acts like they do not care that assassins are killing each other right in front of them in the entire John Wick franchise. In the first movie, I think the people in the club start to freak out. But after the first movie, everybody in public does not give a damn that they're killing each other and fist fighting.
Yeah, most recent example is the fourth one, chapter 4. They're in the club, and that big fat guy is fighting John Wick.
They're fighting to the death, and everyone's dancing.
Literally just dancing.
And they're looking at them.
They're so high on drugs that they don't even realize that there's gunshots. Clearly gunshots being fired.
But like everyone in the universe too. And
you're right. In the first one, they did run out of the club right away.
It's like a habit too, because even in the fourth one, when they're having that huge fight scene in the what was it called? The Arc de Triomphe. I don't speak French, but that huge fight scene in that parking in that traffic circle. None of the cars are even slowing down. Do you not see people fighting, killing, using guns here?
Quickly getting away.
Yeah. I feel like
they're just continually going in this roundabout.
At the end of that scene, after 20 minutes of them fighting, cars finally stopped. And I was like, thank God these cars finally stopped. Would you guys not like stop, get out of your car and run away at the sight of this massacre going on in this movie? People are so ambivalent to the fact that there is murder happening right before their eyes in this whole franchise. Nobody calls the police, and the police never come.
Yes, there's only one cop, and that's the one from the first one where
he's cool with John Wick.
The cop got called for a noise complaint. That's the only time the cops have been called and like shown up on scene throughout this entire franchise.
No calls for murder. Just a noise complaint.
Wild.
And that guy even is like, yeah, I'm not messing with this.
Yeah, that's what I had on my backseat directing. I said in the in the third and fourth movie, I kind of lost the emotional connection to like who he was fighting, because he was fighting so many people and you didn't know who they are. So it's like, why do I care about this fight right now?
Yeah.
And then also I'm kind of losing his like justification for why he even wants to live.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I'd say exactly what you said, especially doubling the why is John Wick's life worth all these people that he's continuing to kill? Not only the assassins he's continuing to kill, but the bodies he's leaving in his wake. I mean, the death of Willem Dafoe's character that was supposed to be his friend. He's, the death of Lance Reddick's character, Charon.
Winston is in the crosshairs
all
at the end of 3.
And then and that's not even just it, because we've got Kane coming into this movie, potentially ruining his life, forcing him to kill a friend.
Yeah.
We've got the Goji who dies, and his daughter who loses her father. Like, all these people for what? For John Wick, he says he's remembering his wife's life.
That's how they tried to justify it in the third one.
To keep her memory alive.
That's not a reason at all.
No. Go be with your wife, John Wick.
Yes.
Like, lay down to rest.
Exactly.
These people did not need to die.
Yeah, like,
that's where
you know how hard it is just to go work out,
let alone to fight to the death constantly. I think in general terms, my backseat directing would be the suspension of disbelief being stretched way too far in the later movies. And then in the third movie, the plot armor in general is too strong, but in the third movie, having people bring a knife to his throat and then just kind of get up and back away to continue the fight out of respect or whatever you want to call it, that stretches my disbelief way too much.
Yeah, I
people
really
just
had to
letting him
convince you, like, the justification behind that scene.
I'm not convinced.
I was kind of just,
respect your effort.
well, I was just kind of pulling it out of my butt, like, I'm just trying to guess, like, if I had to justify the scene, that's how I would have done it, like
they're basically choosing to die with such a dangerous opponent playing with their food.
Yes, exactly.
Because John Wick doesn't do the same.
No.
I mean, he does it
sometimes
with some people, very select groups of people.
Yes, like literally 3 people out of the hundreds and hundreds of people he's got.
I know, when he does too, I'm like, damn, that's so disrespectful. I feel like the people he kills, he's basically saying, I don't care enough about you.
Right.
You have not challenged me enough for me to give you the respect of continuing to live.
Yes, or we haven't previously worked together.
Yeah.
Another thing on my backseat directing spot is everyone in this world an assassin?
Everybody. That's why they're not flinching, because they're like, oh, John's working.
They're just handling business.
They're just clocked. They're the people who are too scared.
They're just clocked in. Is that what you're about to say?
They're clocked out. That's what. But they're the people with enough respect for John Wick to not even chase the contract. That's the general population. He's just in the top tier assassins.
That is hilarious. They're like, yeah, I know he'll kill me. I mean,
I feel like there is that relationship with some of the characters in the story of John Wick, though, of people like the doctor, maybe that one doctor treats him at the beginning of 3. He could try to kill him and rake out 14 million, but in his mind, he's probably thinking, if I even tried, I will probably just immediately die. Even this wounded version of John Wick will slaughter me.
Yeah. And they know that he's coming here, so he needs to shoot me twice, so it's convincing that I didn't help him.
Yeah, that's the high level of intensity, right?
Jeez, man. Yeah, crazy.
I like those small conversations. I like the respect people have for him. I like the camaraderie and kind of the backstory that they implies between all these people, like that doctor and Common's character, Cassian. And I love that dialogue in the movies of John Wick, and I feel like sometimes it lacks that dialogue and relationships in favor of just action, action, action.
One of my favorite scenes in the whole franchise is in John Wick Chapter 2, where he was fighting the main assassin that was coming after him, and then they crash through the window, and now they're on continental grounds, so they have to stop fighting, and they go and buy each other a drink.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things too. So
that is like, that's the world building that we were looking for,
Potentially my favorite lines of dialogue are when he says, I'll try to make it quick. And John says, and I'll try to do the same. And it's so simple because it's not over explaining anything. It's not overly emotional. It's still delivered very stoic, but it's also shows the respect between the two of them. And
like up until basically after that point, how many times did they fight in a continental grounds? Like a lot, right?
I mean, the whole end of the third movie, right?
Yeah.
It's deconsecrated, but still.
Yeah.
Everything's getting deconsecrated, reconsecrated. The rules are always changing.
Yep. But going back to what we were talking about a little while ago, so circling back, favorite shots. maybe of the whole franchise, but definitely of chapter 4 was the top down shot where they're going through this like abandoned building.
It adds
And
to the
he
feeling.
had this, what would you even call that kind of gun? What was the ammo called? Like something
Dragon's breath.
Dragon's breath.
A shotgun of some
It's
kind.
basically like a shotgun, but once it hits them, they are on fire,
Yeah.
which looks stunning.
Yeah.
But then the camera is
Elevated.
this oner above looking down below at them fighting.
A oneer is technically challenging enough, which if you don't already know, we've said this in the show before, is a continuous shot with no cuts.
Yes.
a
No
long
like
period of time.
visible cuts.
No visible cuts.
Yes.
Which they may have hidden them in some of the room transitions for this.
Right.
Because it had to be so challenging to do it.
Yes.
But an overhead bird's eye view oneer, so impressive.
You see like so much in the frame.
They
You
had to
know,
have
like
built that full set, and it was so well designed, completely just stocked to the brim with detail, these statues and art and all kinds of stuff filling the whole set.
right. And then like let's compare that to one of the best oneers ever, right? The hallway scene in Daredevil. Like it's very close. You know, it's a dark hallway, not a lot of detail on the set.
Gives you more control.
Right. Everything's very tight. At some points, there's like 4 or 5 people all in one spot. This, you literally get to see the whole landscape. You know, you're seeing the whole room, the whole room next to it, the whole room next to that too.
And with the dragon breath shot, you can actually see the whole trail of the shot. You don't just see it make impact. You see the fire journey, like its journey to its target. So that takes a lot of detail.
It looked really cool when it actually like hit, you know, and like the sparks would fly and then the fire would go. Like when he was like crouched down right in front of the table and the guy was coming on the table and he shoots him and you could see him like fly up in the air and hit. Like, I'm sure it's very tempting to like cut to a shot of him like flying in the air, but they kept it overhead, which I thought was really cool.
I think they definitely flexed their muscles there. They flexed on all of us as the audience, saying, "Hey, like this shit's easy for us. Look what we can do. Like, look how good our stunt team is. Look how talented we are at blocking scenes. We can do this shit."
If we did a one take fight scene draft, you know, like this first round draft pick, I feel like
so many there's so many like John Wick scenes that you could draft for any fight scene. But I think the really cool thing about that aerial view oneer is it adds to like the feeling of John Wick being more like a video game. It already has a feeling in the plot where it's like, go here, somebody gives you direction to kill somebody, you go there and kill them. It kind of has that video game feeling. This is like the overhead view, like scroller, like the dungeon crawler view, looking down at your video game character as he moves around.
this whole franchise is a video game.
It's
a video game that just
movie.
somehow got made into a movie.
On accident.
Yeah, like the plot is like there's enough, I guess, right, to consider it a story.
I guess.
But then there's 500 bad guys that are coming in waves. Just like a video
Just
game.
like any
it's
video
literally
game.
a video game. But going back to that overhead shot, they transitioned to it by the camera starting on the ground.
Oh my gosh.
And then it like slowly just rised up over top. It's kind of over the shoulder, but still really high. And then it slowly pivots to where it's just locked down, looking straight down.
As it was moving, I was just feeling
Super cool transition to it rather than just like a cut. Like that would have felt really harsh, you know, like to really abrupt to cut from down eye level to cutting overhead.
creates this really pure godlike feeling of just omniscience, looking down on the scene, having a full view and scope of everything in the world in that moment in camera. Like it gives you that bird's eye view, that David Fincher.
Yeah. It's like an old Nintendo game or something. You know, where you're like
like I said, like a dungeon crawler.
Yeah, you get to see the whole map and you're just your
like
little
Zelda.
characters moving around, you know, firing off its fire gun. You know, like it's cool.
But I think that is as good a place as any to conclude with talking about one of the best scenes in the franchise, definitely one of the best in that movie. I'm glad we got to talk about this movie and hit on a lot of the points that I wanted to discuss. We got to talk about the whole franchise.
Yeah.
So I think we sandwiched that in as best we could to a digestible amount of time, trying to discuss 4 whole movies. And maybe we'll touch on John Wick another time in the future.
Something that was really cool about this episode was we didn't know if we were going to be able to watch the fourth one first. You know, we were planning on just doing the first 3, but we're able to
got
like
that in
make
the
it
pinch.
happen and go watch the fourth one. Like that's something fun that we get to do. Is just like, hey, like I have a little bit of time.
Yeah.
I have 3 hours of free time.
Yeah,
Let's go watch this movie because of the podcast. Like I like that the podcast is a good enough excuse for us to like
Just have fun.
to
hang
like
out.
carve out 5 hours of our night to where like, I mean, you have to go to work early tomorrow. I have to edit, I work tomorrow. Like,
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have done this if not for the podcast because I need sleep
yeah,
for work. But
it
we
gives
make these
us an
sacrifices.
excuse
The garage phase,
to
baby.
hang out. Yeah.
And
I like it.
We thanked our fans or our listeners at the beginning.
Yes.
And I want to thank anyone who's listening again now at the end. We really appreciate you guys for taking this journey with us. Always especially appreciate you guys taking with us for the long episodes. But like we said, just for us getting the chance to do something fun and talk about this movie, I appreciate anyone who joined us.
Yeah. Again, we post every Monday and Thursday. Full episodes are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and then we have clips going out every single day. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube Shorts as well. So check us out there. I think we're at like 370 subscribers.
We're growing,
Dude,
baby.
We're climbing. That's quite a few. Like it's exciting.
Tell your
It's
friends,
exciting.
guys. Word of mouth is the best way for podcasts to grow, to be honest. If you can share this with
Definitely.
anybody, it'd mean the world to us.
Definitely. All right. And with that, yeah.
Okay, well, give me one more try.
And with that, yeah.
That's a wrap.